Comments on Savitri by Sri Aurobindo, page number 12. Sri Aurobindo says, "But the teasing of the inconscient remains, and evidently you think that it is a bad poetic taste to tease something so bodiless and unreal as the inconscient. But here several fundamental issues arise. First of all, are words like inconscient and ignorance necessarily an abstract technical jargon? If so, do not words like consciousness, knowledge, etc. undergo the same ban? Is it meant that they are abstract psychological terms and can have no real or concrete meaning, cannot represent things that one feels and senses, or much often fight as one fights a visible foe? The inconscient and the ignorance may be mere empty abstractions and can be dismissed as irrelevant jargon if one has not come into collision with them or plunged into their darkness and bottomless reality." Sri Aurobindo says, "But to me, they are realities, concrete powers, whose resistance is present everywhere and at all times in its tremendous and boundless mass. In fact, in writing this line, I had no intention of teaching philosophy or forcing in an irrelevant metaphysical idea, although the idea may be there in implication. I was presenting a happening that was to me something sensible and, as one might say, psychologically and spiritually concrete. The inconscient comes in persistently in the cantos of the first book of Savitri. For example, opponent of that glory of escape, the black inconscient swung its dragon tail, lashing a slumbrous infinite by its force, into a deep obscurities of form. Into the deep obscurities of form. There too a metaphysical idea might be read into or behind the thing seen, but does that make it technical jargon or the whole thing an illegitimate mixture? It is not so to my poetic sense." Sri Aurobindo says, "But you might say it is so to the non-mystical reader, and it is that reader whom you have to satisfy, as it is for the general reader that you are writing and not for yourself alone." But if I had to write for the general reader, I could not have written Savitri at all. It is in fact for myself that I have written it for, and for those who can lend themselves to the subject matter, images, technique of the mystic poetry. This is the real stumbling block of mystic poetry, and especially mystic poetry of this kind. The mystic feels real and present, even ever present to his experience, intimate to his being, truths which to the ordinary reader are intellectual abstractions or metaphysical speculations. Sri Aurobindo says he is writing of experiences that are foreign to the ordinary mentality. Either they are unintelligible to it, and in meeting them it flounders about as if an obscure abyss, or it takes them as poetic fantasies expressed in intellectual devised images. That was how a critic in the Hindu condemned such poems as Nirvana and Transformation. He said that they were mere intellectual conceptions and images, and there was nothing of religious feeling or spiritual experience. Yet Nirvana was also as close as a transcription of a major experience as could be given in the language coined by the human mind of a realization in which the mind was entirely silent and into which no intellectual conception could at all enter. One has to use words and images in order to convey to the mind some perception and some figure of that which is beyond thought. The critic's non-understanding was made worse by such a line as, "Only the illimitable permanent is there." Evidently, he took this as technical jargon, abstract philosophy. There was no such thing. I felt with an overpowering vividness the illimitability, or at least something which could not be described by any other term, and no other description except the permanent could be made of that which alone existed. To the mystic, there is no such thing as an abstraction. Everything which to the intellectual mind is abstract has a concreteness, substantiality, which is more real than the sensible form of an object or of a physical event. To me, for instance, consciousness is the very stuff of existence, and I can feel it everywhere, enveloping and penetrating the stone as much as man or the animal. A moment, a flow of consciousness is not to me an image but a fact. If I wrote, "His anger climbed against me in a stream," it would be to the general reader a mere image, not something that was felt by me in a sensible experience. Yet I would only be describing in exact terms what actually happened once, a stream of anger, a sensible and violent current of it, rising up from downstairs and rushing upon me as I sat in the veranda of the guest house, the truth of it being confirmed afterwards by the confession of the person who had the moment. This is only one instance. But all that is spiritual or psychological in Savitri is of that character. What is to be done under those circumstances? The mystic poet can only describe what he has felt, seen in himself or others or in the world, just as he felt or seen or experienced through exact vision, close contact, or identity, and leave it to the general reader to understand or not understand or misunderstand according to his capacity. A new kind of poetry demands a new mentality in the recipient as well as in the writer. Words of Sri Aurobindo.